Hello children, I am really happy to see you again with another lesson on Guru Gedara. We have come to the last unit of our grade 11 syllabus. So, we have come to our unit 15 in which we are going to talk about the biosphere. You can see the lesson on the screen, and also we are going to learn about this science in grade 11 under 4 competencies. So, this is our 4th competency. Yeah. So, let us see what we are going to do in this unit. Yeah. Yeah. So, this comes under competency 4. So, let us see what you are supposed to know under competency 4. Explores nature, properties and processes of the earth and space by understanding natural phenomena for intelligent and sustainable use. Yeah. Whenever we learn something, we need to always ask questions from ourselves. Why do we learn? Now, especially a subject like science. So, finally, what we learn should be applied to our life situations to make our life better. While making our life better, we have to think of the environment as well. So, why do we have to think of the environment? Yeah, I think I do not have to tell you because we all depend on the environment. We get our food from the environment, we get our oxygen from the environment, we get water from the environment. So, we depend on the environment. Yeah. So, we need to think about the environment. No environment, no life. That is why they have specially included this unit for you all, because now beyond the exam, yeah, definitely you need to know this for the exam, because I think you all are aware in your examination paper in part 2, the first structured question is based on unit 15. So, for that you need to study this unit, but beyond the exam, so there are several other things that you have to do to maintain the balance of the nature. So, do that part, you have to be aware of different things related to the environment. That is why we need to learn about this. Okay. Now, let us see the learning outcomes of this unit, because at the end of each unit you need to check whether you have achieved the particular learning outcomes. So, let us see the learning outcomes of this unit. Yeah. The first one you can see states the organizational levels of the biosphere in the hierarchical order. Yeah. So, that is what we are going to do first. The next one describes the organizational levels of the biosphere. First you identify the organizational levels, and then we are going to describe each level in bit of details. The third one identifies the pattern of typical population growth curve. That is another learning outcome that you are supposed to achieve at the end of the lesson. The next one identifies the change in the human population growth curve. First you identify the pattern of the typical population growth curve, and then you identify the human population growth curve, and then you are supposed to compare the two. Yeah, go to the next learning outcome now. Explain the factors affecting the human population growth. Yeah, as I told you earlier, we are going to identify the typical growth curve and the human population growth curve, and we see differences. So, we need to explain the factors affecting the human population growth. The next one, describe how energy and nutrition flow through food chains and food webs. You have already learned about food chains and food webs when you are in other grades, but we are going to learn about them in somewhat details here in this unit. States the importance of the energy pyramids with respect to number and biomass pyramids. So, this is going to be something new to you. You are going to learn about ecological pyramids. Accepts that flow of energy in an ecosystem is unidirectional. So, these are the learning outcomes that you are expected to achieve. So, focus on them because at the end of the lesson you need to come back to these learning outcomes and check whether you have achieved them. Yeah. So, first we are going to identify the organization levels and interactions of the biosphere. So, what is this biosphere? As you think, what is biosphere? I think you must already be aware, but let us see what it is. Yeah. So, when we talk about the biosphere, we can't forget the environment. I think you all know what the environment is, because you learn about the environment when you were in grade 6 also. So, there what you learn is that our surrounding is known as the environment, but now as you all are in grade 11, you need to have a better definition or better explanation for the environment. I think you all can see that on the screen. So, let us see what this environment means. Yeah, it says the physical and biological component. When you get the environment, there is a physical component, like you get air, you get water, you get sunlight, you get soil. So, this type of physical components are there, and there is a biological component, like you get organisms, you get plants, you get animals, you get microorganisms. So, that is the biological component, and in which interactions take place. You know, there are continuous interactions. These interactions can be between physical factors, between biological factors, between physical and biological factors. Then as a result of all these interactions, there will be the existence of organisms. So, we identify the environment as the physical and biological component in which interactions take place for the existence of organisms. Okay, now let us go to the next one. Yeah. So, now when you get the environment, there are non-living factors. Yeah, what do you call these non-living factors? Non-living factors are called abiotic factors. You can see some of the abiotic factors on the screen. Yeah, soil, water, air, they are abiotic factors, and there are living factors also. Yeah. So, what do you call the living factors? Living factors are called biotic factors. You can see human beings, humans are also animals, plants and microbes, all these are there. Meanwhile, there are environmental conditions, temperature, pressure, sunlight, humidity. Now I think you can get a complete picture about the environment. Is not just about one thing, is about all of these things. Now, as a result of the interactions among these things only, we get the environment, and as a result only organisms survive. Yeah. Now, you can see environmental equilibrium. To maintain the balance of the environment, there should be continuous interactions between biotic and abiotic factors. Okay. So, you can see how environmental equilibrium is maintained, that is as a result of interactions between biotic and abiotic factors. As I told you, there are abiotic factors, the non-living factors, soil, water, air are some of the abiotic factors, and humans, animals, plants, microbes, they are biotic factors, the living factors, as a result of interactions between them and among them, and also within a particular group of organisms or within a particular group of factors, the environmental equilibrium is maintained. Let us go to the next one. Yeah. So, our main topic is biosphere. What do you mean by bio? Bio means what? Bio means life. So, when you get the part of the earth where life exists, we call that the biosphere. Yeah. So, that is what it says, the region of the earth where life exists is called the biosphere. But again, when you get the earth, like there are different components to the earth. You get a part in the earth where you get air, and where you get water, and where you get a solid part. Accordingly, we can identify three main components in the biosphere. Let us see what they are. Yeah. So, you can see the three components now on the screen. You get the atmosphere, that is the layer of the air around the earth, and also the earth has water in it. The part of the earth where you get water is called the hydrosphere, and the solid part of the earth is called the lithosphere. So, these are the three main components of the biosphere, but again we need to understand, when you get the atmosphere, to a certain extent of the atmosphere organisms can live. It can support life, and to a certain depth of water organisms can live, and to a certain depth of lithosphere also organisms can live. So, in this way when you get the atmosphere and when you get the hydrosphere, when you get the lithosphere, there is a part which can support life. So, when you take all these things together, we call that the biosphere. Okay. Now, let us see what we are going to do next. Okay. The diagram shows the three components of the biosphere again, so that you get a better idea again. So, it has atmosphere, the part of the air in the earth, and then hydrosphere, the part of the earth which contains water, and you get the lithosphere, the solid part of the earth. Yeah. Now, what we are going to do? Organizational levels of the biosphere. Can you remember the organization levels of the biosphere? Sometimes you must have already done this. So, try to remember the organization levels. Yeah, individual, and then what do you get? Population, and after population what do you get? Community, and then ecosystem, finally what do you get? Biosphere. So, these are the organization levels of the biosphere. So, you can see how it goes from simple level to complex level. Now, we are going to talk about these organization levels in bit of details one by one. Yeah. You can see this in a picture also. You can see an individual, just one organism belonging to a particular species in the environment, and then you can see population. If you get a group of organisms of that particular species living in a particular area at a given time, that is a population. Yeah, this picture gives you an idea, and we are going to discuss about these things again. And then you get all populations living in a given area, that is a community. And then you get all populations, I mean all communities living in a given area, and they are interacting non-living environment. You call that the ecosystem. So, when you take all these ecosystems together, that makes the part of the earth where life exists, you call that the biosphere. Okay. As I told you, we are going to discuss about these organization levels in details now. What is the first organizational level? Individual. So, let us see what it is. Yeah, it says a single organism belonging to a particular species living in the environment. That is an individual. So, you are an individual. I am an individual. If you get a mango plant, is an individual. If you get an ant, is an individual. If you get a bacterium or a fungus, alga, they all are individuals. They all are single organisms which belong into a particular species and living in a particular place. So, then we call them individuals. We come to the next organizational level now. What is that? Population. See what it is? A group of organisms belonging to the same species in a particular geographical location during a specific time period. You call that a population. Can you think of an example for a population? So, when you give an example for a population, you have to think of a group of organisms which belong to one particular species, and you need to consider the area where they live, and you need to consider the time duration. Now, just think of human population in Sri Lanka in 2021. So, human population. So, we consider a group of organisms which belong into one particular species and living in Sri Lanka. So, we specifically mention the geographical area, and in 2021 we consider the time also. Now, you see, when you define the word population, there are three things that you need to mainly consider. What are the three things? You need to consider the species, and you need to consider the geographical area, and also you need to consider the time that you consider. So, all these things should be included in your definition. So, there is also one example here. Yeah, human population of Sri Lanka in 2014. So, as I told you, you consider the species, the geographical area, and the time duration. So, in the exam if you are asked to define population or if you are asked to even write an example, I think you all can do considering all these three. Yeah. What is the next organization level? Shall we go to the next organization level now? That is community. Now, you see how gradually the complexity increases. We got one organism and then we got organisms of that particular species living in a particular area at a given time. Now, we consider all populations living in a given area. All populations living in a given area make the community. Now, let us see, a group of different populations interacting with each other in a particular area. Yeah. So, you can see examples here. Animal community in Yala National Park. So, there is an animal community, they interact with each other. So, what do they interact for? Why do they interact? Yeah. So, they interact for food, sometimes they interact for habitat, sometimes they interact for mating, sometimes they interact for protection. So, in that way, for different purposes they interact with each other. So, if you get in that way group of populations living in a given area interacting with each other, we call that a community. So, then this is basically the living component of the environment. When you get the environment, there is a living part, the biotic part, and there is a non-living part, the abiotic part. So, when you get the living part, that is actually the community, the non-living part is actually the habitat. So, as a result of the interactions between these two only, ecosystem exist, right. Okay, now, we go to the next organizational level. What is it? Now, we have done up to community. Let us recall individual, population, community. Let us see some more examples of communities. Yeah. If you get Yala National Park, you can see bird species, there are 215 species, there are 44 species of mammals, you get peacocks, elephants, leopards and in large numbers. So, then these are also examples for communities. Okay, now, we have come to the next organization level, that is ecosystem. Yeah, all the communities and the non-living component with which they interact in a particular area is called the ecosystem. So, now this looking at the definition, we can identify the things in an ecosystem. All the communities, so there we consider all organisms and the non-living component, and they interact with each other. We need to consider the interactions also. So, already these interactions can happen between living things and living things, between living things and non-living things, and between non-living things and non-living things. As a result of all these interactions, we get an ecosystem. Yeah. So, now what is the last organization level then? Now, when you get all these ecosystems, what do you get? The part of the earth where life exists. Already what we call it, we call that the biosphere. Okay. Let us see the components of the biosphere again. You can see it consists of atmosphere and it consists of hydrosphere and the lithosphere. So, which we have already done earlier. Yeah. So, now we have talked about the organization levels of the biosphere. I think now you all remember them in the hierarchical order, that is one of the learning outcomes. Now, you can check whether you have achieved the particular learning outcome. Now, what is the next one? What is the next learning outcome? Okay. So, in this unit we are going to talk about population and population growth curves. So, we come to that one now. So, we are going to talk about growth of population and growth curves. Yeah. So, when talking about growth curves and population growth, we have to talk about population density. So, what this population density is? Number of organisms of a certain species living in a unit area of a selected area. Now, just think of Sri Lanka. If you want to find out the population density, what we have to do is we have to take all human beings living in our country and we divide it by the area of the country. Then we can get the population density. Otherwise, you can take it for particular areas also. Now, think that you want to get the population density of Colombo district or Gampaha district or any other district. So, then you can take in that way also. Okay, you can see population density of Sri Lanka in 2014 is around 329 people per square kilometer. So, the idea is if you get 1 square kilometer, there have been about 329 people. Okay, there is a formula to get the population density. Let us see what it is. Yeah, you can see it on the screen. Population density equals, now think that if you get the human population density, you take human population and you divide it by the total area. Now, as we consider Sri Lanka, we divide that by total area of Sri Lanka. Yeah, so you can see 21.59 million people divided by 65,610 square kilometers. In that way, we can get the population density. Yeah, so here in the second part of the unit, we talk about population growth and the growth curves. So, when we talk about population growth or growth of population, we need to consider the factors which affect the growth of a population. So, I think you all know these factors. Let us see what these factors are. Yeah, factors affecting population growth. You can see births, number of births affect the population growth, that very obvious, and immigration, because there can be instances where organisms can come to a particular population from another area due to various reasons, maybe due to climate change, maybe due to changes in the seasons. So, maybe due to some predation. So, because of this type of thing, sometimes organisms can come to population from another population, that is immigration, and organisms die. So, that remove individuals from a population, and when organisms leave a particular population, we call it emigration. Now, as I told you, due to various factors, organisms can leave a population. Yeah, that is what we call emigration. So, we identify 4 factors: births, immigration, deaths and emigration. So, births and immigration add individuals to population, and deaths and emigration remove organisms from a particular population. Yeah. So, now we can go to the next part of the lesson. Yeah. So, this is one of the other learning outcomes. What is it? Identifying typical growth curve of population. Typical growth curve of a population. So, there we consider a natural population existing under natural control. What is this natural control? Now, you know, when organisms live in a particular environment, they are subject to various things, like you know, they are subject to diseases, they are subject to disasters and things like competition, predation, parasitism. So, they are subject to all that. So, then if you get a population existing under natural control, and if we get the number of organisms of that particular population and plot them on a graph against time, we get a particular graph. That is what we call this typical growth curve. I think you all can see the shape of the graph, and remember one thing: if you are asked to draw this graph in the exam, you do not start from 0. That is one of the mistakes that most of the students do, because you know, organism should be there to reproduce. Then we do not start this graph from 0. That is one important thing that you need to remember if you are asked to draw this graph in the exam. Okay. So, when you get the typical growth curve, we can identify different phases. It is not the same thing throughout. You can see how it has changed with the time. Yeah. So, we identify the first phase as the lag phase, where you see a slow growth rate. We are going to discuss about these phases in bit of details and the reasons for these changes. So, now we will identify them, and phase 2 you can see a rapid growth rate, we call that exponential phase, and we identify a third phase as well, that is decelerating phase. There you can see that the number of organisms has started to decrease. Later we are going to identify the reasons, but meanwhile you all can think the reasons. Now, we identify another phase as well, that is stabilizing phase. So, we identify 4 phases: lag phase, exponential phase, decelerating phase and stabilizing phase. So, now we are going to talk about these phases in bit of details, and we are going to learn the reasons for these changes in the growth rate. Okay. Let us see the first one, lag phase. You see a slow growth rate in the lag phase. So, what do you think? Why number of organisms increase slowly at this phase? Now, just think of a group of organisms which have gone to a new area. Now, they are not really adapted to the area, and meanwhile, they may not be like sexually matured organisms. So, the growth rate is bit of slow. That is what we see in the lag phase. Yeah, you can see number of individuals increase slowly. They are the reasons. Number of sexually matured organisms are less. So, these are the reasons for the slow growth rate that we observe in the lag phase. Now, we go to the second phase that we see in the growth curve. Yeah, you know what it is. Yeah, exponential phase. We have come to the second phase that we see in the typical growth curve. You can see a rapid growth rate. Okay. You will see the reasons on the screen. Before you see the reasons on the screen, can you guess the reasons? So, why there is a rapid growth rate during the second phase? What do you think? Now, I told you like at the beginning they are not much adapted. Now, they are more adapted to the environment and they get enough food, and by this time predation might be less and less competition and enough food, right, for them to live. So, they can reproduce. So, as a result the number increases rapidly. Let us see the reasons again. Yeah, organisms being well adapted to the environment and favorable environmental conditions. They get enough water, they get enough oxygen, they get enough space and food. Yeah. So, these are the reasons for the rapid growth rate that we observe in the exponential phase. And the other thing that we observe in the exponential phase is this. Yeah, birth rate exceeds the death rate. That is the reason why we see a rapid growth rate in the exponential phase. Now, we are going to go to the third phase that we see in the typical growth curve. What it is? Yeah, decelerating phase. Now, you see in the second phase, in the exponential phase, number of organisms increases rapidly. So, obviously, what happens now? The number is really high now. So, there will be competition and meanwhile predation will be there. So, as the number is high, competition is high. So, lack of space and lack of food, lack of water. Now, because of all these things, now the growth rate decreases. That is why we see a decrease in the growth rate in the decelerating phase, as you see on the graph. Yeah, let us see the reasons again. Competition among organisms for limited resources. Now, the resources become limited, as I told you. So, automatically competition arises among organisms, and scarcity of food, diseases, predation, parasitism, all these things happen when the increase of the population. So, that results in reducing the number of organisms in the population. So, what can you say about the birth and death rate at this phase? Yeah, in the exponential phase, we saw that birth rate exceeds the death rate. So, what can you think about that when it comes to decelerating phase? Will they be equal or different or what? Yeah, now obviously death rate should exceed the birth rate. So, that is why the number of organisms decreases when it comes to decelerating phase. Now, we come to the last phase that we see in the typical growth curve. Yeah, stabilizing phase. Now, the number of organisms like stays constant. Now, it has come to the carrying capacity of the environment. Because when you get a particular environment, maybe a forest, or maybe a pond, maybe a wooden log which is decaying. So, all these are environments. So, there is a particular number of organisms that it can support, because it is with some limited resources. So, then now the particular population has reached the carrying capacity of the environment. So, now the number stays constant. Yeah. So, then this is how it looks like if a particular population exists under natural control, as I told you at the beginning. Now, you know what this natural control is. Yeah, population has come to an equilibrium, population growth considered to be 0. Now, birth and death rates are almost equal, they are not exactly similar, they are almost equal. So, the number stays constant. Yeah, as I told you, now the population has come to the carrying capacity. Now, let us see what this carrying capacity is. I already told you, but let us see what it is. Number of organisms in the population at the dynamic equilibrium. Dynamic equilibrium. Now, this equilibrium is a result of several interactions going on. This equilibrium is a result of competition, predation, parasitism, disasters, diseases, and all that. This population subjects to all that, then the number stays constant. Now, because of these factors, or these factors will remove the excess from the population. So, in this way, if a population exists under natural control, in any time to come, the number will stay almost constant. Yeah, that is what that we need to know regarding the typical growth curve. Okay, so that is about the typical growth curve. Can you remember there was another learning outcome? What is that about? Let us see what it is. Yes, as you see, that is about human population growth curve, or growth curve of human population. Yeah, it is bit different. Now, you can see that it looks similar to the earlier one at the beginning, but has it come to the carrying capacity of the environment? Do you see any equilibrium in it? Instead, it keeps on increasing. So, why? So, I want you to think of the reasons why the human population keeps on increasing, while a natural population comes to an equilibrium with the time. The human population has not come to an equilibrium, it keeps on increasing. Yeah. So, let us see the reasons. Meanwhile, you can see that it takes a J shape, which is different from the growth curve of a typical population. Yeah. So, you can see the birth rate keeps on increasing in the human population growth curve, and the death rate keeps on decreasing. Now, as I told you, I want you to think of the reasons why the birth rate keeps on increasing and the death rate has decreased. Yeah. So, then aren't humans affected by the so called factors? Now, what are the factors I told you? Competition, parasitism, predation, disasters. Aren't we affected by these things? What do you think? We are affected. Then how come our population keeps on increasing? I think now you all can think of the reasons. Okay, let us see what the reasons are. Yeah, here also you can see how the population of the humans has increased with the time, and you can see for the human population to become 1 billion, it has taken 300,000 years, but it has become 2 billion in 130 years, and it has become 3 billion in 30 years, and it has become 4 billion in 15 years. Now, you can see how fast the human population has increased. So, now still we did not come to the reasons. I think now you must have really got the reasons. Looking at a growth curve, we can predict the time taken to increase a particular population by a certain number of individuals. So, let us see how to do that. Yeah. So, there is a question here. use the graph and predict the time taken to double the human population in the world in 2013. Look at the graph. You can get the human population in 2013, it has 7 billion. So, then how do you predict the time taken by the population to double? Now, how do you do that using the graph? So, you can continue the graph according to the way that it goes, and then you can take an estimated value. So, you can see that in the next graph. Yeah. So, what we have to do is we have to continue the graph according to the way that it goes, and then accordingly we can get an estimated time for doubling of the population. You all can do that later. So, you can see how it is done, and then accordingly you can get the time. Yeah. So, in this way, using growth curves we can even predict the time taken to increase the population by a certain number of times. Yeah. So, you can see how it is done. I think now it might be very clear to you. Using a growth curve like this, we can predict the time taken by a population to double the population. So, now you can see how it is done in the next slide. Yeah. So, you all can now do this at home and see whether you get the correct answer. Yeah. Now, we have done two parts of our unit 15. In the first part, we have talked about the levels of the biosphere. Now, I think you all can tell them in order. And the second part, we talk about population and population growth curve and human population growth curve. So, these are the things that we have discussed. Now, we come to the next part of the lesson. I think you all remember the next learning outcome. So, we go to the next part of our unit 15. Yeah. Maintaining the equilibrium of ecosystems. Yeah, already you know equilibrium is a result of the interactions going on between living things, between non-living things, between living and non-living things. So, when it comes to maintaining the equilibrium of an ecosystem, two things are really important. One thing is energy flow. Energy should flow from one level to the other, and then the other thing is cycling of materials. Yeah. So, we take this as biogeochemical cycles in this unit. Yeah. In the next chart, I show you how this equilibrium is maintained, and then what we are going to learn under that. Yeah. So, I think you all can see when it comes to equilibrium of ecosystems done by two main mechanisms. So, one is energy flow. To explain energy flow in science, like actually this is a part of science, ecology, we can use food chains, food webs and ecological pyramids. These are like different models used in ecology to explain energy flow. Under ecological pyramids, we are going to talk about three types of pyramids: number pyramids, biomass pyramids and energy pyramids. And to explain cycling of materials, as I told you, we use biogeochemical cycles. Actually, there are many biogeochemical cycles. I mean, any element used by an organism subjects to cycling. Basically, is about the organism obtaining the element from the environment and adding it back to the environment. Now, when it comes to this cycling or biogeochemical cycles, now we talk about the elements used by organisms. So, it is about organism taking the element from the environment and adding it back to the environment. So, these are the things that we need to consider. So, under biogeochemical cycles, we learn only about two biogeochemical cycles, carbon cycle and nitrogen cycle. Okay, now, we are going to talk about the things that you see on this chart in a bit of details. First, we talk about energy flow. Now, to explain energy flow, we are using food chains, food webs and ecological pyramids. So, first we will talk about food chains. Yes, already you know what a food chain is, because you have learned this when you were in grade 6. That is like the first time that you learn about the food chain. So, this shows a feeding relationship among organisms. Now, Actually, it shows what eats what in a community. That is what that we can get from a food chain. Yeah. Now, you can see a food chain on the screen. You can see a flower, caterpillar, frog, snake and owl. So, this is a food chain with 5 organisms. You can see the food chain starts with a producer, here flower, because it has to be a producer always, because they are the ones which can make their food. So, what can we take as producers? We can take green plants, or we can take algae, or we can take autotrophic bacteria. So, they are the producers in a food chain, and there are certain things that we need to learn when it comes to food chains. Let us see what they are. Yeah. So, I told you that there are certain things in a food chain. Autotrophs are there, heterotrophs are there, decomposers are there. So, in this way we categorize organisms based on their mode of nutrition. Yeah. Let us see what each of these categories are. Autotrophs. Auto means self, actually troph means food. As these organisms can make their food by themselves, we call them autotrophs. You know, green plants are autotrophs because they can make their food. So, what do they use to make food? You can see that on the screen also, you all know this. They use light energy from the sun, they absorb carbon dioxide from the air, they take water from soil, putting all these things together, they can make their food. So, you call this photosynthesis. What do they make in photosynthesis? They make glucose, you all know this. So, then that is the nature of autotrophs. So, if you get green plants, they are photoautotrophs. Why we call them photoautotrophs? Photo means what? Photo means light. As these green plants use light energy to produce food, we call them photoautotrophs. Meanwhile, there are chemoautotrophs like some bacteria. So, they use chemical energy to produce food. So, you call them chemoautotrophs. Yeah. Now, let us go to the next category, that is heterotrophs. So, what are heterotrophs? If you get these organisms which feed on other organisms. Why do they have to feed on other organisms? Because they can't make their food. So, they obviously have to feed on other organisms, you call them heterotrophs. Yeah. So, then there are different types of heterotrophs. We can also call them consumers because they are the ones which feed on producers, and depending on what they eat, we can identify 3 types of heterotrophs. Primary consumers, they eat the producers, and also secondary consumers, there can be carnivores that eat the herbivores, and also there are tertiary consumers, carnivores that eat the secondary consumers. So, in a food chain we can identify all of these. We can see producers, and we can see primary consumers, secondary consumers or tertiary consumers. They can also be called first level consumers and second level consumers or third level consumers. In that way also we can call them. Yeah. Now, let us go to the next type of organisms that we see in a food chain. Decomposers. What do they do? They are really important. Now, I have included one picture just to give you an idea. Fungus. We get fungi, they act as decomposers. They can convert complex organic substances in waste materials or in dead bodies of plants and animals into simple substances, so that they become available especially to plants again. So, they do a wonderful job. Yeah. Feed on dead plants and animals. Some bacteria and fungi are decomposers. They can convert complex organic compounds in dead bodies to simple compounds. Actually, they have the ability to secrete a series of enzymes to do that. Using these enzymes, they can convert these complex substances into simple substances, so that they become specially available to the plants again. So, that is why I told you they do a really important job when it comes to this. Yeah. So, they can also be called saprophytes, as they feed on dead plant and animal materials. Yeah. So, when it comes to a food chain, the other thing that we see is the trophic level. Trophic level. I told you the word troph stands for food. So, if you get the position of an organism in a food chain, that is the trophic level. So, if you get the producer, that is at the first trophic level. Now, if you get the primary consumer, that is at the second trophic level. So, the secondary consumer is at the third trophic level. So, in that way we get the trophic level. So, each organism in a food chain is called a trophic level. Not only this, we get some other things also in a food chain. Let us see what they are. The other thing that we see in a food chain is the trophic level. So, what is this trophic level? Each organism has a position in a food chain, you call that the trophic level. These are also called the links. Now, each organism in a food chain is a link. Now, you see a food chain on the screen. So, let us see how many links are there in it. Yeah, you get the producer, consumer, and there is another consumer. This is a food chain with 3 links. Then there are 3 trophic levels. This plant belongs to the first trophic level, the rabbit belongs to the second trophic level, and this eagle belongs to the third trophic level. So, then there are 3 trophic levels or 3 links. Okay, so, that is about food chains. But actually food chains do not give us a correct picture about energy flow in an ecosystem. Why? Why they do not give us a correct picture about energy flow? Because when you get one plant is eaten by many animals, and animals also eat different types of food, because if they eat the same thing, obviously they will get pretty fed up of eating the same thing, even we do not like to eat the same thing. So, animals also eat different things. So, as animals eat different things, and as one animal is eaten by several other animals, these animals and plants become a link in many food chains. So, then food chains do not stay as separate entities, instead they stay interconnected. So, that gives us a complete picture about the energy flow. So, now we are going to talk about a group of interconnected food chains. I think you all know what it is. Yeah, a group of interconnected food chains is called a food web. So, now let us see what this food web is about. Yeah. So, as I told you, a group of interconnected food chains is called a food web. Look at the food web on the screen. You can see there is a plant already, food chain should start with a plant or a producer. It can be a plant product also, it can be a seed, or it can be nectar, or it can be a dry leaf, or a yam, or any plant product, or it can be a plant also. Yeah, you can see that here this plant is eaten by 3 animals, and this bird is eaten by 3 animals. So, in that way you can see how one animal becomes a link in several food chains. So, that is why we get interconnected food chains in the environment. This is how it exists in an environment, not as like separate food chains. So, we get food webs. Yeah. So, now you see here we get food chains and food webs to explain energy flow, and I told you that we can use ecological pyramids also to explain energy flow in an ecosystem. So, now we are going to talk about these ecological pyramids, and these are like models used in science to explain this type of things. Yeah. So, first we talk about the number pyramids. Yeah. So, when you get the number pyramids, we consider the number of organisms belonging to a particular species. Now, just think of a food chain like grass, grasshoppers, frog, and a snake. Normally we know we get more grass plants than grasshoppers, and we get more grasshoppers than frogs. So, in that way as we go up along a food chain, we see a decrease in the number of organisms. Then if we kind of draw a diagram proportionately to the number of organisms belonging to a particular trophic level, we see a decrease as we go up. Then it gives us kind of a shape of a pyramid. That is why we call that the number pyramid. So, let us see a number pyramid here. Yeah. So, you can see a typical number pyramid here. These rectangles are drawn proportionate to the number of organisms belonging to one trophic level. So, as I told you, and just think of the example I told you, and as we go up along the food chain, we see a decrease in the number of organisms, we get this shape. So, will we get this shape always? What do you think? What do you think? Will the number pyramid be always upright in this way? Or are there instances where number pyramids become inverted? Just think. Now, in the number pyramid, we consider the number only. Yeah, there are instances where the number pyramids become inverted, because number pyramids do not consider the size of the organism. Just think of a mango tree, and it can produce many fruits, but number wise is just one tree, and there will be like many birds which can feed on that tree, and there will be several other animals which feed on those birds. So, then when it comes to that one, then number wise is just one, then not considering the size of the organism. This is like one problem when it comes to number pyramids, as it does not consider the size of the organism. So, there can be instances, as I told you now, where it becomes inverted. You can see one on the screen also. Yeah. So, you can see inverted number pyramids. Yeah, that is what I said, sometimes number pyramids can be inverted. Now, you see rose bush just one, many aphids can feed on that, and there will be many parasites feeding on aphids. So, then this is a completely different number pyramid. So, then it does not give us a correct picture about energy flow. To overcome this defect, ecologists have introduced another ecological pyramid. What is that? That is the biomass pyramid. What is this biomass? So, if you get the mass of living matter, you call that the biomass. So, there what we do is we take the mass of organisms belonging to a particular trophic level and draw the pyramid. Yeah. So, you can see mass of living material is called biomass, as I told you. Biomass pyramids represent total amount of organic matter in each trophic level. So, biomass pyramid shows the actual mass of living things at each trophic level and is measured in grams per square meter per year. But actually practically measuring will be difficult, but if we can do in that way, we can get a better picture about energy flow in an ecosystem. You can see a biomass pyramid here on the screen now. This is a typical one. Normally producers should have more biomass than primary consumers. Primary consumers should have more biomass than secondary consumers, and secondary consumers should have more biomass than tertiary consumers. This is a typical one. But again there is a problem. What is the problem? So, can that also be inverted? Yes, that can also be inverted, because it does not consider the how fast the organisms grow. So, as it does not consider how fast the organisms grow, there are instances where the biomass pyramid can also become inverted. To avoid this problem, ecologists have introduced another pyramid called energy pyramid. Yes, these show the amount of energy transferred from one trophic level to the next. Energy is measured in kilojoules per square meter per year. Yeah, that will be like pretty difficult practically, but energy pyramids give us a correct picture about energy flow. Why is that? Yeah. So, you can see on the screen now, this energy comes from sun to primary producers, and you can see how much of energy has transferred to one trophic level from the previous one. Now, let us see as shown in the diagram here. Here 100%, primary producers have got 100% of energy, and how much have gone to primary consumers? 10%, and 10% of that has gone to secondary consumers, 10% of that has gone to third level consumers or tertiary consumers, and for apex predators only 0.01% from the third level consumers. So, you can see that there is a 90% energy loss. So, why what is the reason? You can see the reason also. The main reason is energy lost as heat. How come heat here? Because all these organisms respire to produce energy. Their cellular respiration produces produces energy. So, part of that is lost as heat. So, that is the main way in which this loss happens, but meanwhile as feces, as urine, this loss can happen, and also some parts are left uneaten. So, because of this always there is a energy loss at each trophic level. So, when you get an energy pyramid, then we get a correct picture about energy flow in an ecosystem. But then what is the problem now? Still there is a problem. Yes, there is a problem, because it is really difficult to measure the amount of energy contained in organisms in a trophic level. Otherwise, it gives us a very good picture about energy flow. So, then these are the things that we need to know about ecological pyramids. So, we have come to the end of today's lesson. So, we talk about organization levels of the biosphere, and we talk about typical population growth curve, and we talk about growth curve of human population. We identify the reasons why the two are different, and then finally, we learnt about how to maintain the equilibrium of an ecosystem. When maintaining the equilibrium of ecosystem, energy flow and biogeochemical cycles play a very important role. To explain energy flow, we use food chains, food webs, and ecological pyramids. We talk about 3 ecological pyramids: number pyramid, a biomass pyramid, and energy pyramid. So, these are the things we have learned. In the next lesson, we will talk about biogeochemical cycles and environmental pollution. So, these are the things we are going to do that in the second part of our unit 15. So, as we have done this part of the unit, you can go back to the learning outcomes and check whether you have achieved each learning outcome. That helps you identify whether you have learned the lesson. Okay, then let us meet up in another lesson. Have a great day.